Yeah, sure. Let's see. Uh, there's got some fun ones in here. Oh, yeah, this one.
Data jail. Remember we used to talk about that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so the nature of Liquidware Unplugged is that we start live and we give people a chance to join us and we make a little small talk. Maybe it's about the industry, but maybe it's about Zoom backgrounds. And then we get far more serious in a few minutes and we'll talk about the subject of today, and that's transformations in VDI and DaaS. But until then, make sure you maybe got a cup of coffee and enjoy getting to know us a little bit.
Oh, there's
What are the prices on there, Jack? A regular burger,
yeah, that's Bob's Burgers. Just grabbing a burger
$3.
here. Yep. Oh, I wish. Let's see.
The price of
Hanging out,
beer is
hanging
definitely
out in
too
the White
low. Oh,
House.
that's a good one.
Yeah, just doing a quick visit. They gave me a little desk here.
I'm in north of Atlanta in a town called Cumming, Georgia. It's close to Alpharetta, Georgia, if anyone knows where that is. And the weather here today is 73 degrees, very high humidity at 88%. Got a little thermometer over
You
here.
know, Jason, I forgot to mention that I was actually right up there this weekend for a wedding.
That's funny.
I was in Gainesville. Yeah.
You know what's funny about well, my church is in Gainesville.
Nice.
What's funny about that is I was in Nashville this weekend, which is where DJ's from.
This is typical. Yeah. This happens.
I was in Manchester actually. I didn't get that far, and then I went over to Tullahoma because my mother she totaled. She was in a wreck. Wasn't her fault. Less than a month ago, and she had an 18-month-old Highlander, Toyota Highlander that she loved. It's the color she wanted, and then so insurance is paid out. She's okay, but driving a rental car. The car that we found was in Manchester, and it was actually a good price. And so we drove up. It's about 3 hours or more.
All right.
Yep. Had to return the car over at Tullahoma. Isn't that where Carl Webster's from?
Yeah, that's right.
He may not be joining us anymore because he's
I
retired.
drove through there as well.
Yep.
We probably crossed each other coming back on.
We probably did. All that rain in Mont Eagle.
Yeah.
Gary, where are you joining us from? Town, location?
I'm joining you from Central Mass. So if those that are around Massachusetts probably understand the Treehouse Brewery. That literally is probably about a mile from my house. So I get visitors or I get requests all the time for to make some shipments for some Treehouse brews. But I spend half my time here in Mass, Sturbridge Charlton line, and I spend the other time up in Maine on a lake up there. That so I kind of split time between the two places.
That's nice.
Really nice.
We took a
Heading
family
up
to
there
Acadia.
Thursday, taking the father-in-law out again, see if he can try to beat me with the fishing tournament. So far, he's been unsuccessful in all these years, and yet he still likes me as his son-in-law. So
we took the family to and kids to Acadia a few years ago. So beautiful up there.
yeah, that's about my place is about an hour and a half from Bar Harbor, Acadia, just outside of Augusta.
Yep, we went to Freeport and we did the Land's End thing over there. Is it Land's End, right?
Oh, the LL Bean, you mean?
LL Bean. I get them
boot?
mixed up just because they copy each other. Yep, LL Bean. We went in there and had to do the lobster cooker restaurant around the corner. It was a good trip. Jack and Kristen are in the Windy City area.
Windy City area. That was the stormy city area today. It was pitch black about 20 minutes ago, but I think the storm has passed. So that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. We got back, a couple of us got back from IGL Disrupt last week. Liquidware was exhibiting there, and it was a busy week meeting with our big alliance partners like Microsoft and Citrix and what they're calling now. What are they calling it? Omnissa?
Yes, Omnissa.
Yeah, and I think that website went live yesterday, Omnissa.
That's correct.
The VMware booth was called, it was funny. I should have taken a picture of it. The booth was called Horizon. So when in doubt, let's just call it Horizon, I guess now,
Yeah.
because it's in flux. So that's understandable marketing wise, but that's the VMware's nor on this's name was on it yet or anymore. But it was good. It was in Fort Lauderdale.
Yep.
DJ, you had some travel too, didn't you? Last week?
Oh, just to the wedding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to be at home. We're selling our house, and so it's very much a time of trying to be around for that as much as we can. But,
Yep.
Yeah, fun times. After getting back from EUC Unplugged, I definitely needed some time
Yeah, that was good, wasn't it?
to chill. Yeah, there's a lot of behind the scenes that Jim Moyle, myself, and Patrick Coble do a lot of work behind the scenes for that event, and so
yeah, you take an
it was
active
pretty
part in
exhausting.
that with the helping Steve Greenberg out in thin client computing. It's a very unique event, and I would recommend anyone look at it next year if it continues to happen, because it was sold out and to capacity this year, and it's really, there's a bunch of influencers there in EUC, but there's also several customers and a lot of partners. Liquidware was the anchor sponsor for the second year, and we're proud to do that because that's an event we love to support. We can't get too commercial in this. It's unlike any other event ever. There's no agenda going into it. It's assigned no other event in our industry anyway like it. There's no sessions. There's a couple of sessions the first day that are known about, but the rest of the sessions are determined at the event, and they actually have giant post-it notes, and everybody there gets in a room and anybody can propose a session. Most of them are on end user computing, but if you wanted to propose a session on off-grid living, that would be perfectly acceptable. If you're an expert in that and you want to talk about that, not many of those sessions happen, but they are kind of fun when they do. For instance, there was one on how to build your own MAME type emulator joystick controls this year, which is a little geeky and fun. And that one happened, but there's some excellent content there. The future of application delivery too, and then the things going on in this industry about the transformation that we're seeing happen because of the big platforms. And now we're getting to today's subject a bit. All that transformation that's happening, the fear and the uncertainty and doubt of a lot of the platforms, and then there's emerging platforms that are just going full steam ahead that are adding innovation. So that's what may be causing a lot of the transformation. So there was several sessions on that went along those lines and that subject matter last week, and that's what we're talking about today, right, Kristen? This is Liquidware Unplugged, and that's why you're hearing a little bit of chat. And now we're back over to getting close to what we're talking about today.
It is. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Liquidware Unplugged 2024 VDI and DaaS transformations in healthcare, mastering workspace transitions with Liquidware DEX. I'm Kristen McGargle, Senior Marketing Manager here at Liquidware, and we're happy you've joined us today. If at any point you have any questions or comments, you can place them in the chat or Q&A feature, and we will address them as time allows. Please feel free to bring your questions. Joining us today, we have Gary Edel, Director of Digital Workspace Solutions Architecture at Presidio, DJ Eshelman, Principal Consultant and Owner, Eshelman Enterprises. We have Jack Smith, Senior Solutions Architect and Subject Matter Expert with Liquidware. And moderating today is Jason E. Smith, VP Alliances and Product Marketing with Liquidware. Jason, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I want to give, Jack's with Liquidware too. I want to give Gary and DJ just a little bit of time to talk about their organizations a little bit further. Gary, would you let us know a little bit more what you do at Presidio and some of the things that you do on a daily or weekly basis? If it's, we know that you've got a lot of team members to keep in line there, but you want to share a little bit more about what you're doing over there at Presidio?
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate that. So been with Presidio about 12 years now. Started out as a delivery engineer, doing, primarily Citrix subject matter expert, delivering really for a lot of healthcare. Most of the hospitals in New England, I probably had some sort of footprint in there or installation base. But over the years, moved into a pre-sales role, management, and then recently a director role for all things end user computing and modern workplace with Microsoft, so M365. So the entire ecosystem. I have 9 SAs underneath us, and my role now is really as the leader of the team is actually just kind of going in and talking to clients, kind of at high levels around their go-to-market, their strategies, around end user computing or Microsoft M365, and doing a lot of listening, and it's in consultative, trying to help with, again, a lot of the big players out there have made some significant changes in either their go-to-market or their pricing, or just obviously the divestitures that are out there, and just looking for guidance. So really right now, my role in Presidio is we're advocates for the customer. We try to be as agnostic as possible in almost all circumstances, and really listen to our end users and our customers and try to decide what platforms make sense for them on a regular basis. And then obviously we have a services extension on our delivery team for digital workspace, and we can deliver on just about every single platform that we sell. So that's kind of the day to day, and again, it's a very, very customer focused industry for us. We're
Great.
solution advisors, not selling widgets per se, I guess.
And a variety of platforms you guys do too, right? Not just one or the other as far as VDI, DaaS, or physical goes, right?
Yeah, it's really across the board. We can do it all, any hyperscaler. We've got subject matter expertise both in pre and post sales, across just about all those verticals. And really to the point that, that's just a small piece of Presidio. Obviously, Presidio is very large within the hyperscalers and cloud migration and app dev. So, really we work collectively together around all these type of things. And a lot of times we're working with our cloud migration teams, because obviously VDI still follows the apps. So it's very critical, that we stay in alignment there. And we're obviously the big move to the hyperscalers has been a lot of activity in that space.
Thanks. We appreciate you being on today. Know you're busy. DJ Eshelman, a little bit more about you and Thrive IT.
Absolutely. So my name is DJ Eshelman. I'm from Franklin, Tennessee. Not originally, but that's where I'm proud to be now. And so I started my IT career a good 26 years ago or so. And then in 2004, discovered this thing called Citrix, and was kind of voluntold to lead a deployment there for some law offices that later ended up being a foray into healthcare, and started servicing healthcare organizations in Colorado with running multiple environments, and then went on from there in 2011 to start working with Citrix Consulting as a resident consultant, which just for the record means I wasn't actually an employee of Citrix, but they hired me to as a contractor to be with their teams and lead consulting engagements, train their staff, that sort of thing. And so was on the road nonstop. So I've been all over the country, almost every single state actually, as far as doing consulting work, and then other various travels as well. Brazil, Canada. It was a great journey, but ultimately being on the road every week got a little tiring, and so I decided that I really wanted to focus in on training the next generation, and having something that I was leaving as a bit of a legacy. My life vision is to leave the world better than I found it. And so I decided to try and do that a little bit. And so in 2020, I released 2 books. One was Be a Citrix Hero, and the other one is called Just Do This, A Simpler Way to Succeed in IT. And so what we also launched that year is Thrive IT, which has a vision of helping people to, surprise, surprise, thrive in IT instead of just survive IT. And so I'm very passionate about helping people to go beyond just the tech knowledge and learn how to do a lot of the associated things that actually, the reason I signed up for this webinar specifically is because I see healthcare as leading the way in a lot of good methodology in places where bad methodology can be really damaging and sometimes even deadly. Literally deadly. And so it's an area I very much am focused in on, having a good focus on doing the right things at the right times and keeping not only the end user safe, but also patients and staff all safe in what we're doing. And so it's very important to have those kind of mindsets. And so that's largely what I do today is training. But I do still do a lot of consulting work with various companies, either as my own company, Echelon Enterprises, or as a third party associated person that's kind of fulfilling some of the work. And so keep it diverse.
Right, it's great. And both Gary and DJ, I mean, they're familiar with the Liquidware solution set, but they've also had hands-on with Liquidware competitors, similar products, things that are embedded in the platform, FS Logics, all these similar technologies. A little bit about Liquidware as we're hosting the webinar is that you'll hear our solutions in the context of digital employee experience going forward. And by that, we do provide the most coverage in digital employee experience, abbreviated DEX. And that's because we actually not only monitor and optimize DEX with our Stratosphere solution, but we can control DEX now within our real-time remediation solution named Command Control. And then we manage DEX with Profile Unity. The user persona actually following the user around, and when you log in and you have everything you need in seconds, including with Flex app, the applications following you around, that is the digital experience that can follow you from desktop to desktop. Knowing the digital experience and being able to assign a DEX score to it is a category that is also a subset of DEX known as digital employee or experience monitoring. And that's where Stratosphere comes into play, and a lot of other monitoring and remediation solutions in the market come into play. But being able to also manage and deliver DEX, delivering DEX with all the settings you need, as well as the applications. That's what we mean by providing the most DEX coverage that outside of a platform can help you and transform desktops from one platform to the other. And we have with us Jack Smith, who is subject matter expert, especially over Profile Unity and Flex app, but has a deep knowledge as well of Stratosphere UX and Command Control. The topic today is, of course, its own, and we've got a couple poll questions to ask as we set the stage here for where we're headed here, is that there is a lot of flux in this industry and a lot of transformation that is happening. It's been happening now for over the last year, and leading up to that, and some of the changes happening in this industry have to do with the fact that Microsoft has made a big push directly to do DaaS themselves with Microsoft AVD, also with Windows 365. And then long-standing players in that market, such as Citrix, had a lot of organizational and business changes happening through being once a public company and then going back private, having investors that were when they were on the public side, making active decisions in that organization. And now they're an independent organization again, and they're reinvesting a lot of technology, but nonetheless, there's been changes with licensing models and pricing. And if we look at the other longstanding player in this market, VMware has, as no secret to anyone, has been sold off to Broadcom, much bigger organization, but they've spun out the EUC organization, as we all know, and the likely suitor is already underway there with an organization called KKR. They invest heavily into technology-based companies, but it's a wide breadth of technology that they invest in. And they actually, the same company owns Parallels, which is an option to Horizon, is KKR. But they own several technology companies. 1-800-Contacts, if you can consider that a technology company, they own that. So they own a lot of web-based companies as well. So that's in the middle of them being spun off. And as we mentioned earlier during the chat, new organization named, and the website went live this week, Omnissa. So that, if you haven't seen that new website, actually, I think it just went live yesterday. Omnissa is going to be the name of the Horizon and Indian User Computing Suite. All those things that they spun off into that organization fall under that. Their own DEX category and things of that nature. But nonetheless, all these price changes, license changes, organization changes, and then innovation coming through new platforms or newer platforms like Workspace, like Dizzion. Amazon also came in with Workspaces and AppStream a few years ago. And there's a couple others I I didn't mention that are also options to these long-standing platforms has caused change to be occurring in this market. And Kristen, we have this poll question to put up. So if all these things are, you've seen this as well, and your organization is looking at changing the way that they deliver desktops, does your organization plan to move or switch their VDI, DaaS, or multi-session computing platform in 2024? Simple yes or no question. And the quicker you answer, the quicker that we'll move along. A little bit of time that we'll have while people reply. Do you think I captured that, Gary? The changes that are happening?
Yeah, I think you certainly did at a high level, organizationally, and then there's the minutia in between there and how that affects customers, and we can dive into that, a little bit more in terms of the conversations that we're having.
Seeing that as well, DJ?
Yep, even a shutting down of VDI type platforms. So that's a shift as well. So you can call that a move.
Yeah.
Okay, we have, let's see, we've got 65% participated. Looks like most people have logged in. So I'm going to end the poll. The results, can you see the results?
Yeah.
It's 54% yes, 46% no.
Jack, could you take a screenshot of this?
I just took one too.
When we make this recording available later, we learn that the poll data doesn't show up in the recording, so we'll dub that back in. But that's an incredible number, and I think that's even higher when we asked a similar question on a broader webinar not long ago. 54% of these participants, and today's is about healthcare, so it's highly likely that if you're listening, you're involved in healthcare or you're a healthcare organization. And if you're not planning on switching this year, perhaps you are planning on switching and you're making some moves now, or at least looking at your options that are out there. We have a follow on, or well, before we get to that one, any surprises there, do you think, Gary and DJ?
I expect it to be about 50-50. I think that's kind of what I'm seeing. I mean, it comes down to, a lot of times depends on the EMR, right? So it depends on the EMR, and then what if they're on-prem or they're hyperscaler, because I think really what it comes down to is those are going to help or dictate really what your options are, or if you're forced to remain on a platform for a period of time while you still evaluate the ecosystem and your options. But it's kind of what I'm seeing. It's so I don't know about you, DJ, but it's about what I would have expected there.
Yeah, along the larger healthcare organizations that I work with are very long-term service release focused. And so even if there is a look towards a shift, it might be several years out that shift is actually going to happen. And it may not be a delivery shift. It might be a platform shift. In other words, they might shift hypervisor platforms or something like that, but not the delivery mechanism. They keep that steady. So that I guess it doesn't surprise me that we're seeing some fear in the marketplace and that sort of thing that's driving some of this, but also just a normal kind of, as we come to the end of a life cycle, that's when these things kind of start to shift away from what they were before, as we enter into a new method of support.
For sure. Jack, do you have thoughts on this one?
I think everything is on the table when it comes to what people are shifting to. I know we're talking a lot about, VDI type workstations, but I've even seen shifts to physical. People are doing full circle. They're going to everything, or mixtures of things, or multiple clouds, or whatever. I mean, it's all up for grabs right now as to where they're going to go, or if they go.
Yeah, if they go. I want to touch on that in a second. Let's put up the next poll question, because
Yeah,
Jack
I was going to say he just
almost gave it away,
segued.
didn't he?
Yeah, nice one, Jack.
He didn't know. I don't think he knew. Is your organization considering a return to physical? He really didn't know this, I don't think. I don't think we touched on this. We only had 2 poll questions today. Is your organization considering a return to physical laptops or desktops for at least some of your workspaces? And we've actually heard that, as Jack's saying. So it's interesting. And maybe not all of your workspaces can be done that, but for at least some of your workspaces that have been VDI and DaaS, Are you thinking about return to physical? And that could be even IoT on physical, and then you're just doing SaaS apps, right? And there's no VDI and there's no DaaS in the mix. Or it could be that you're delivering the apps in a different way, and we can touch on that in a moment. But as people are answering that one, and Kristen's looking at the number, well, we've got the results here.
Results are up.
This
Just a
one's
little
higher
bit
than
of
I
a
thought.
flip.
This one is higher than I thought. 46%
Yeah.
saying yes. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little surprised, but is anyone else?
A lot of return to office, though.
Yeah.
Not all that surprised, actually.
Well, you're
Actually,
hearing it every day, you know. I
Yeah.
guess, Jack.
the old message is the best message, right? It's still a matter of what do they want to manage? What kind of life cycle management do they want to be in? And I think a lot of upper guidance in terms of like the C-suite in most hospital systems, they remember what it was like.
Yeah.
So
The 90s are back.
I don't want to return to that, but we're seeing kind of a balance point of, is it worth the cost? Is it worth, one trade-off for another, that sort of thing. So I guess I'm not fully surprised by seeing that result.
Yeah,
No,
but keep in mind that today's, I know we already level set, but keep in mind that today's is healthcare. So there's only so much of this remote work that we could have done in healthcare, because these people have to go in, and I'm thinking the core use case for healthcare is or terminals that are in patient rooms, but we also have admin. There's a lot of health support staff that are involved in healthcare. And maybe those are the ones that you could that people are thinking of returning to physical. I'd be interested to know, we're out of poll questions, but what are some of those use cases that you're thinking about returning? If you want to give us some of those use cases in the webinar chat area there, because that's quite significant. And by the way, here's a little plug, Liquidware. All of our solutions, every one that I mentioned earlier, run on physical as well. They run on laptops, and that includes FlexApp. FlexApp can deliver applications to a laptop or an endpoint device, even Internet of Things device, which if you're not familiar, that's the version of Windows, very much like Windows 11, for example, but it's intended to be a little lighter weight, and perhaps some other security options in there to only put a lightweight OS on the endpoint. And FlexApp can deliver to those too. So imagine a patient room that doesn't have DaaS or VDI, but FlexApp is delivering those applications, and you cut out all the parts in the middle. And that's not going to be the overwhelming use case for FlexApp. We still support Citrix, VMware, AVD, and all those, but then the rest of our suite runs on physical devices as well. And we do have an increasing number of people doing that. Jack, thinking about some of these organizations, and we don't have permission today to mention customers by name.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what they do? Like, is it like, I know of a hospital over here, or even if it's not a hospital, I know of an organization over here that is looking at doing this, and they once had. Do you have anything in mind like that?
Quite a few hospitals, actually. So it can be either hospital. A lot of customers I work with are hospitals, or medical care companies that provide products to hospitals, which kind of falls sort of in the gray area of the HIPAA controls and things like that as well. And even insurance, right? They're all interconnected to each other in one way or another with the same types of information and interactivity. But especially with hospitals, its reduction of images is a big one, because there's tons and tons and tons of images and things like that. And it gets even more complicated when a hospital is associated to a university, because now you've got a mixture of doctors and teaching doctors that need specialized applications based on the context of the class or whatever they need. So standardization, especially in school systems, is very difficult to do, because there's a random, I need this app now, and I can't crack open the image or build another layer on the fly and merge it together through the traditional methods. I might have to do something like a Flex app where, all right, cool, I got this application for you, attach, go. But yeah, it really is a lot of reduction of overhead of the applications that I need to install into my images. or how many images I'm ultimately maintaining.
So, you know, I don't mean to over rotate towards physical, but obviously if there's 46% of these attendees on today thinking about physical, that's one that we can include on just the thought process and the rest of the webinar. But what are some of the I want to go back over to VDI and DaaS, but first I want to say, Jack, you said if they switch, right?
Yes.
And I made this prediction too. I think we're going to see a lot of organizations looking at other platforms, but what does it actually take to make them make that switch? We did a proof of concept. That's great and everything, but I've been using IBM for years, right?
Yeah.
And I said nobody got fired for IBM, didn't I, DJ? And somebody in the room yelled out at EUC Unplugged. They said, I got fired for buying IBM one time. But so I can't say that anymore, but there I go again. But if you're using a platform that you've used for years, whether that is, you know, any of the stalwarts we mentioned at the beginning, what do you think it actually, what is that breaking point that they say, we've got to make a switch? Anyone, feel free to chime in here. What do you think that moment is? Is it one thing or is it a stack of things that's making organizations that 54% that they've said, we're going to switch this year?
Money. Hard stop. Money. Because if your VDI costs have going up 3x or more, that's you're not hearing it from the engineering having trouble. You're hearing it from the exec level going, we need to spend less. And we need to look at alternatives.
I can't remember a point in time. I mentioned this at our own sales meeting in January, end of January, I think it was. A period of time where actually license cost has caused such a shift in the market. Innovation, yes. Disrupting technologies, yes. But license costs and the way that licenses are made available, you know, all or nothing or piece or nothing, or would you guys are all, I think we're all in agreement that at the end of the day, it's here's a bill for another $1.5 million. We're literally hearing that from hospitals, and maybe you've heard more or less, and you've got to pay this by X date. And then that's causing them to look at other platforms.
Yeah, that's been the biggest challenge I've seen with a lot of I deal with some of the largest healthcare organizations around the country. And really it's been, you know, they put in for their budget. So you've got about a year, you know, for some of the bigger players, you know, where they put in what they expect to be a budget. And then all of a sudden there's a shift or there's a change. And then because of these changing various different programs or systems to support said programs, they're unable to really give a true, you know, expectation as to what that price is going to be. And then all of a sudden that price is unveiled and they have a few months. In some cases, I've seen ones where they only have 2 months where, you know, it's almost like a hostage situation, as I've been calling it, right? In terms of what that looks like and having to either, you know, pony up that money because you don't have time to re-platform. And because, you know, at the end of the day, when you look at these, you know, there's, depending on, again, if you're an Epic customer, if you're an Epic hospital system, there's only certain things that you're going to be allowed to run or going to be able to run in a supported platform. So, you know, a lot of times there's that. And then there's just the reality of the cost of change. I talk about this all the time with my healthcare organizations, even before some of these, you know, I've seen customers that want to go to like a complete platform shift. And then you have to have conversations about, okay, is the cost of doing that platform or shifting that platform from training to whatever, the cost that you may save, is it worth it for the disruption within your, you know, within your hospital, within your ecosystem, your doctors, your clinicians, all that stuff. And then, you know, looking at some of them are even looking at more like a managed service because, you know, they don't want to retrain on an entirely different platform. And then there's the cost of that. So really the cost of change is what we really kind of hone in on. And does that make sense for you? You know, and I don't know, DJ, if you're seeing, you know, similar, you know, in your conversations, you know, with them, but it's a very difficult, it's a long conversation. It's a very difficult one. And there's a lot of things to unpack and figure out what's going to be the right decision, you know, ultimately.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not just the licensing cost. And that's what I've, in my conversations, with a lot of IT directors in healthcare, what I'm hearing more and more of is that the biggest challenges are the thought of having to retrain their staff on a new platform when they're already completely overwhelmed with technical debt largely from acquisitions. That's the thing in healthcare, that it's unprecedented in almost every other marketplace. And nobody does more acquisitions than healthcare that have bigger impacts than healthcare. And I guess I probably see this more being in Nashville, where, well, we do a lot of healthcare here, to say it very lightly.
Yeah.
And so what I see a lot of is those, not just the acquisitions and things like that, but just when it comes to like doing anything new. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's something new with a hypervisor, just a update that requires a difference in the way things are done, anything like that has a cost that is hard to nail down what that actually costs. But the cost of training people to do something new is enormous. And so what you see is a lot of workarounds and things like that. But you also, to be blunt, you see a lot of just straight up trauma from just the constant, like, feeling like you can't take a vacation kind of thing. And I've been seeing a lot of like very, very unhealthy things going on because of that. But ultimately, as far as reasons go, yeah, it's mixed. But there's the cost of licensing, but there's also that kind of being held hostage, like Gary's saying. It's like, it really does feel like that sometimes. It's like you hope that they're not going to get into that kind of usury thing where they just charge whatever they want, knowing you're going to have to pay it because you're stuck like this. If folks are listening right now, and yeah, please do not do that. We will come after you. We will not support you anymore if you do that. But I think that's kind of the big challenge here, is that it still feels like that. And that's something that I think a lot of these platform providers really need to take into account, of saying, you can't just keep people on because they're stuck. There's got to be value added.
Yeah.
It's got to be something where you're actually providing value in the areas that are actually needed, not just they perceive are needed.
Yeah, value and customer partnership with the vendor. I mean, I think some of that's been a little lost, and I think it needs to be kind of redeveloped a little bit, some trust.
Absolutely.
I mean, I do believe that the Amnesa split, from Broadcom is really good for the VMware EUC team, for what it's worth. I mean, ultimately, we know what Broadcom, how they typically handle, their traditional acquisitions, and being split off, and the opportunity to just kind of grow into their own space and look more towards a little bit more of agnostic approach, and free themselves from ESX. I think that's going to be a bit of a journey. I mean, we know they've already started that with Horizon Cloud and Azure. I mean, they're not that far away when you think about it, if they're able to run those workloads there. So it does provide some other options, in those spaces. So, and honestly, and where I think Liquidware, I'm a big champion of iGel as well. The Liquidware product suite and the iGel suite, I see those as bridges. Really, these two products, in my opinion, allow for customers to have decisions around being a little bit more agnostic and not being so forced into a certain platform. With iGel and Liquidware, we can make AVD actually work within Epic in a lot of ways, right? Or Meditech, or whichever different peripherals that you need. But Liquidware giving you that, OS agnostic, and kind of, one platform for applications, for persona, and obviously the command control, which is a newer thing. Just positioning, because the biggest thing I talk to my customers about when we start looking at, like, what is your EUC, like, what are your EUC drivers? What are you looking to do? It's really about, okay, how can we not paint you into a corner, right? Because there's certain solutions out there that if you go that route, you're stuck. Like, I have a big healthcare organization that decided to do a lot in AWS. Well, AWS was a little bit challenging in some ways with EUC. Now they're starting to loosen that a little bit, right? With your core and being able to run Microsoft 365, but you're really limiting what you can and cannot do in those spaces in the hyperscalers, depending on which, where you're parking your EMR applications, right? And some of those haven't thought all of that all the way through, and then they're kind of facing the music and like, oh well, I guess we can't put it in Azure because there's that tax coming in and out for ingress egress, and then there's proximity based, right, in terms of latency. So there's just a lot that goes into these conversations, and it's amazing how other decisions can really impact EUC, in a large scale, in terms of what you have, the options to deploy, and some of the solutions that are out there.
Yeah, I think it also with that, and this is something that I know for a fact that Jack and I have seen, is that sometimes there's a disconnect, and this happens probably again more in healthcare than a lot of other places, although there's some exceptions to that in finance and whatnot. But you tend to have this separation of teams. Like there's no cohesion between people that are in networking and supporting the end user, the desktops, and those that are in kind of that end user computing space. It's becoming this whole different department within this kind
A
of
lot of
a
this.
hybrid of yeah of managing servers but also serving applications. And so you have this end user facing thing that isn't end user focused as far as like the accountability and that sort of thing. And so you have these mesh of teams. And now we're talking about, okay, shifting back to the endpoints. Well, what does that mean for all of that? It means that you're basically shifting towards a new skill set that people aren't ready for in a lot of these cases, that or even aware of. So they don't, like Gary's saying, there's a lot of tools that are available to these teams that they don't necessarily know about because they either are just not willfully ignorant in most cases. They just don't know that it's possible. And it's like I see this all the time in IT, where we think we're figuring it out. Think we're so unique in our solution, but reality is most of us just Google it anyway, and so somebody else has figured it out for us or whatever. But we still have this mentality that we need to figure it out. We need to have that ownership of it. But yeah, I think it's a specific challenge within that, as far as the uh, the knowledge part of it is like, okay, there's options for applications to be run in this context, but also run in this other context. So it's like some will be in the cloud, some will be in the data center because of latency concerns, and some will be on physical devices in exam rooms and things like that, because frankly maybe they don't need that latency protection because networking has gotten so much better. It kind of you kind of just have the right fit for the right thing at the right time,
Right.
and that's just a mentality that a lot of these departments just haven't gotten to yet, unfortunately.
We do have a question that came in, and I want to encourage the audience to ask questions about anything we discussed or anything we haven't discussed yet. Please discuss this, because this is what we're thinking, or this is what we're going through, or we're actually thinking of this right now, and these are the steps we're taking. We'd love to hear from you as part of that interaction. But the question that we had was more along the lines of the transition with our user persona. Have we taken any hospitals through that before, is what it was. I'm paraphrasing. And I do have one that I have in mind that this was a big healthcare organization that is out of the Michigan area, and they've had one of the long-standing VDI platforms in there, and they've decided to make a switch, and they did a proof of concept of AVD. And they already own our core 3 solutions before we added command control. So they have Stratosphere, they have Profile Unity, and they're delivering many of their apps with FlexApp. So they engaged with us and said, look, we're planning on moving to AVD, and with Nerdio was what they had chosen, and they wanted to know how we could help in that scenario. So we look back at how much of our solutions that they're using, and they're using Profile Unity to manage the persona, the log on, the log off. They're also doing context-aware printers with it throughout the hospital, and they're doing several other things that are managing that VDI deployment for the user experience. And then they're also delivering several applications with FlexApp, and they have been using Stratosphere to provide diagnostics into that environment. So we asked them a few questions, and they're actually setting up the AVD environment where they're going to be hitting the same Active Directory environment. And if you know our solutions, they hook based on group policies that are in there. So Profile Unity knows what group you're in and knows those things. So they were able to tie in, and they're under a POC phase right now with Nerdio and AVD in there. They were able to hit that same AD infrastructure, and in their proof of concept, when their users in that group logged on, they immediately had in AVD, and they're going from Windows 10 to 11, by the way. Their profile came in, their context-aware settings came in, their applications that they already had been using in the VDI platform came in, and then they were able to look at the user experience between the new environment that they're in the POC phase and the older VDI DaaS environment that they've been using now for over a decade. And they were able to make some determination in there that they needed to pay for, whether certain groups of users needed to pay for the next level up of AVD compute in there to make sure that the user experience was at least as good or better than the legacy environment. And so that's a project that we're going through right now. And I realize that the attendee of today's webinar asked about the persona piece, but they're actually using far more than that. So it actually greased the skids right into the proof of concept, right into that final mile of the user, the DEX part, the digital experience that the user is going to, and also they didn't have apps tied to that platform. They didn't have app delivery tied to it. With FlexApp, they didn't have to repackage any of that. They worked across 10 to 11. Every one of those apps worked. So that's how we were able to help that organization. And Jack, do you have any other that Liquidware has able to help with?
Yeah, I've been running into a lot of we need to get off FS Logics. They tried it, they didn't like it, they want an alternative, they want support, So we've been able to move their settings off of the disk, put our own profile disk in if they even wanted to go back down that route, and replace those components in. The VMware one's the same thing. I'm looking to move off of DEM. I want something a little more robust. What can you do? Or any of those legacy. At this point, I think I can call most of the AppSense and Res stuff legacy. The legacy profile solutions that they just have basically been on maintenance, but not have really done much, and they're ready for a change. So we help them on pretty much all of the different types of environments.
Gary and DJ, do you have notes from the field like this, even if it's not directly with Liquidware solutions? We're helping the community out here, talking about how these transitions are taking place.
The profile piece specifically is where I think a lot of people get confused as far as what the capabilities are there. It's like yes and that's something that makes this a unique solution, is that you can do it to where you are just managing persona in the strictest sense of what you're doing, not just file management. And this is where my buddy Jim and I have been saying this for a long time about solutions like that are container based, like FS Logics. It's like, yeah, it's a good solution, but it's file management at that point. You're putting files into something that would normally be on your hard disk. So management is a different scenario. And so with healthcare specifically, I know of 3 organizations that I can think of immediately off the top of my head. One is a firm that deals with a lot of ambulatory care. The other is a hospital system. And then there's another one that is, how do I describe them without giving them away? They do things with stuff. I'll leave it that way. But anyway, so the thing is, all 3 of those have active scenarios, one of which is in 3 different data centers. And so for them, the question was, how can we, let people be utilizing those resources in all data centers without having to just have them isolated into a single, place all the time, and then just lift and shift whenever there's an outage. That was actually with the ambulatory care, with the actual healthcare organization there, the hospital. They actually had that challenge where they had a literal line was cut, like the dark fiber line was cut in between their 2 data centers, and so they had to immediately fail everything over. And so that's why they went with a lightweight solution with the profiles, because a heavyweight solution where you're managing all those files back and forth between everything else, you've got a latency there that is not acceptable. Whereas if you're just doing the basics of your profile management that you can make into kind of a zippable, I guess you could say, synchronized between data centers, and it's much quicker to have that access be not active, but closer to it, and so you're able to keep in sync much more accurately.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I've been seeing anyways, is those kind of use cases like that are very unique for that. That's the part of the profile Unity solution that I think I'm seeing more of when I've just seen it deployed.
Gary, you're still on mute.
I coughed,
There
I
you
was
go.
on mute.
Yep.
No, I was just saying, to echo what you're saying, I mean, honestly, where I see the value, FS Logic is a great solution for what it's worth and what it does, right? But when you start talking about, I'm seeing an advancement in application virtualization, which is, sometimes if it's in Azure, you have multi-session, it's still Windows 10, Windows 11, so you have the same persona, which that's fine. But in a lot of worlds, you are dealing with server OS, you are dealing with desktop OS, and Profile Unity makes that obviously easier, from a one-stop shop. FS Logic is going to make you a different profile, depending if you're doing a server OS, you're doing a Windows, and then keeping that in sync. What does that mean? How does that affect your user experience? And then obviously being able to manage that and then replicate that from a DR perspective. So I think, where Profile Unity, where we've seen is really where the sweet spot is when you've got that widespread, types of applications that are being consumed by your end users, whether it's 75% desktop, whatever that's embedded, whether you're doing some sort of app layering solution, or maybe you're just baking it in. But when you also have the application virtualization layer that's not in Azure, that is not doing like a Windows 10, 11 multi-session, where you're really having to manage two different personas, for a single user, and that's where I see the Profile Unity is really an advantage in the field.
Yep, and it doesn't have to be either or. Jack can attest to this. We've got customers that actually use FS Logics with Profile Unity, and that's perfectly fine. We have our own profile disk that was innovated actually during the same years, if you go way back with FS Logics. But we have a complementing profile technology, even when you run our profile disk, that the point that Gary pointed out, where you would otherwise end up with a profile disk basically per platform or per OS, and you need to keep those in sync. That's exactly what our secondary profile technology does. It's a profile hive. It's called portability. It doesn't rely on roaming profiles or even the exact user profile in there. We know at Liquidware what files in the OS make up a smart user profile. I say a smart user profile because I'm forgetting about caches and those bloated areas. And we also know the registry keys that make up a smart profile. And we separately can look at the profiles right after user login, whether that's FS Logics or our profile disk, and we can make sure that it's up to date and that if it needs to be remediated for a specific OS. So it takes the shortcomings of a profile disk technology, even our own, and it gives you the best of both worlds. And then when, not if, when the FS Logics or the Profile Unity profile disk corrupts, because it's tied to ntuser.dat and a few other things, and you might get a poorly written log on or log off that corrupts it, the portability has an entire hive of the profile, and it will cause a few extra seconds at the next login once you blow that out, and it'll restore it and the user's off and running. So it's a very complementary technology. It's not necessarily competitive. Jim Moyle and I have spoken about this for a long time, and we even spoke about it when the FS Logics was FS Logics itself, that we actually complement that. We don't directly compete. 100% overlap with that technology. It's a great one-to-one. Not to mention, but to mention, the context-aware settings that you get and the mapping drives and printers, all those things that go beyond group policy preferences can help you out for full user management. We mentioned AppSense and RES earlier, so it's that full user management, not just a profile sticking.
Well, and the other thing that's really important for people to know is that portability means portability. Like you kind of touched on, and I think when you maybe say this again, is when you're dealing with the notion of, let's say you have an organization that you're acquiring, and they are all physical endpoints. Well, being able to put the agent on there, manage that profile from that point, now it's all of a sudden it's pulled in. Now you can use that same persona in a VDI environment on yours, or published applications on your end, whatever that looks like. You've got some portability there. That doesn't mean you have to have like, well, I have this desktop over here and this desktop over here, and that kind of nightmare of a scenario. You've got some tools that can actually make it a little smarter as you go along and as you transition. And that's actually for M&A, that's actually something I think is very underutilized.
Yeah.
The phrase I like to say is, a managed profile is a migratable profile.
That's great. in the few minutes that are available, I'd like for us all to think about if there's one to 3 points that you could leave the audience with, you know, and I think we've got a pretty good read since we're all actively having these discussions with healthcare on an ongoing basis. What would those points be? I'll start with one since I had the question in my head and giving you guys time to think too. I would say if you're that 54% on this webinar that are looking to make that platform switch, I would say it is the utmost importance is to measure the user experience between those two environments, whether you use Stratosphere or something else. Baseline what you got today, and then when you roll out that POC and that even broadened POC, you should check the user experience directly against it. So our Stratosphere customers can do this already. Baseline the user experience you have today in whatever platform you have, and then put that POC out there, and you literally look at the data side by side, and then you have a decision support to either right size that proof of concept by adding compute to it, the resources that you need, the storage you need, RAM, CPU, anything else you need to bring that up before you move forward. So the other parts of managing the profiles and the applications separately is advice as well, but I would say trust and verify by measuring. That's mine. Who wants to go next?
I mean, I can go next. I mean, the biggest thing that I want to hammer home here is, and I'm seeing this all the time, you know, Microsoft likes to make a lot of promises about what AVD can do and cannot do. And I just want to make this emphatically clear. I love Microsoft, love my Microsoft partners. You know, I mean, we're a huge partner of theirs. But frankly, I've found that Microsoft is making promises that they can't keep. And if you look historically, they've never addressed the issues. They've always relied on their top tier partners and vendors in order to bridge the gaps to get them what they need. AVD is a fantastic solution, not by itself, and Microsoft refuses to admit their warts. I see it all the time, and what ends up being is some paralysis by analysis. In other words, you know, they keep leading the witness for a while, saying, "Oh no, 6 more months, we'll get that endpoint, we'll be able to plug that in, that you know, that redirectional work." And all I'm going to say is, if you're really looking for that journey and you're really looking to platform off of the big two, you really have to plan well in advance and understand that you're going to require some third-party tools, you know, in order to make that successful and ensure a good user experience going forward. Don't wait on Microsoft, because you'll be waiting for 3 years down the road and it'll still never happen. So that's my biggest advice for those of you that are looking to re-platform and move to AVD. You know, that's what I'm seeing, and and also plan, right? I would say you need about a year and a half. You know, you need about 6 months to really start to evaluate and plan, and then a year to implement and change.
Great. Jack?
I think my big takeaway with all of my customers is support from your vendor is important. It's vitally important. So free tools are free tools, and you're going to get good luck. You know, you're going to get pushed out to the community if there's an answer.
You're not going to say what you usually say about free?
Free puppies. Yeah. Yeah. Free tools are free puppies.
Free puppies.
Yeah. There's a lot of, you know, got to feed them. You got to take them to the vet. You got to train them. There's a lot of stuff that just is unseen because you saw that. Well, it comes with it. That's great. But I've also used the term Happy Meal toys, or, you know, things like that. Vendor support is vital. And if you are not getting the support you need for your mission critical components, you know, like DJ was saying, your file management of your profile, or your application sequencing, or even your data. You know, if you're looking at your data and it's like, well, here's, you know, the free analytic tool that comes with our stuff, don't call us. or if you do, call us only if it's broken, but we're not going to tell you what it means. You know, that's important. So my biggest takeaway a lot of times is, you know, what's the difference between a Liquidware deployment, installation, and purchase versus what I get with the platform. And I always go, support, mic drop. You're not going to get much support from
engineers
them.
like you. I mean, you've been with Liquidware for how many teen years now?
12.
Since you were a teen. No.
Since I was a teen, 12 years. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, and that's the case. That's who you're going to get. You're going to get somebody with 12 years of experience in this industry when you choose Liquidware, and that's the case in almost every one of our. It is.
Yeah.
Every one of our regions also has someone like that.
Yep.
So it's not somebody's just been with the company, or they've got to figure out how to support this, or they say, I don't know, you're on your own. That's not the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
And even our support, when you call, you don't get that level 1 have you rebooted. You get a level 3 person every time.
In the United States. Yep.
Yep.
DJ, bring us home.
Yeah, I think, well, a couple things that really continue to stand out in 20 years of dealing with healthcare companies. It's always the same things. It's kind of amazing to me, and that is that the technology needs to be driving forward with a solution to a real pain point and a real problem. And I find that, you know, if there's the notion that the C-suite knows best. Let me just say something, and I've been saying this a lot lately, and I'll just keep repeating it because I think this needs to be heard. They hired you to be the smart person. They hired you to be the person that's going to help them direct towards a solution. Do not just hope your C-suite's going to figure it out. And this, I say this because usually what they're looking at is the lowest cost possible. They're not necessarily looking at the best solution possible. And so when it comes to third-party tools, that sort of thing, really the way this really plays out in my mind is being able to say, you know, these vendors make these promises, like Gary's saying, that there's a lot of like all these things that are said, but they're not backed up because they don't have to be. They're just words, right? So really when it comes down to is, can we work with partners in our technology world? Can we work with people that are going to be standing for us no matter where we're at? And I think that really comes down to, you know, whatever technology, whatever, you know, delivery, whatever those applications are sitting on, how can we make it so that those are actually flexible enough to be put into various scenarios, and can make it so that you don't have to be, you know, reinventing the wheel every 3 years.
Right.
So that really requires us as technology people to talk to the people in the C-suites and give them solutions to their problems instead of waiting for them to solve the problems for us.
They hired you for a reason, and sell it with confidence what the plan is, because that's what they're looking to you for. You're right. I'd like to thank Gary and DJ, Jack, as always, for today's discussion. And I was thinking about it, you know, misery loves company. So, you know, 54% switching, I hope we went beyond that, and we gave some guidance that, you know, you're in good hands with Presidio, with Thrive IT or Liquidware, and many other vendors and consultants in this industry. Engage with them on the plan, and heed the advice of many, because the advice of many will make your project successful. Kristen, you're going to give us a wrap?
Yes, that's all the time we have today. Thanks everyone for joining us. Take a look in your email. You'll receive a link to the recording, which you can review or share with a colleague. And again, wanted to say thank you to Jason Smith, Gary Edel, DJ Eshelman, and Jack Smith for joining us today. And have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.
See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.